to Stash Chats. If you are new around here, Stash Chats is my weekly live show where every week I talk to a different member of the sewing community about how they got into sewing, what they're up to, and of course their stash. So this is a great time to ask questions to your favorite content creators in the sewing community. So my name is Yvette and I am the co-founder of the Stash Hub Sewing Organizer app, which I run with my husband, Doug. So yeah, in Stash Hub news today, we've got a couple of new shops in the shop section of Stash Hub. So if you've got the Stash Hub app, make sure you go to shops and check out all the new shops there. And there are exclusive discounts if you're on Stash Hub Plus as well. So our new shops are CLC Prints, where you can get your sewing patterns printed, your PDFs printed, but also instructions. And they even do 3D printing for some really cool stuff to organize your threads, especially if you've got one of those IKEA pegboards. So check that out. And we've also got Good Fabrics, who do a really amazing range of eco-friendly and sustainable fabrics, mainly for dressmaking. So yeah, go and check those out in the shop section of Stash Hub and get yourself a cheeky discount as well. If you are joining us live, welcome to Stash Chat. Make sure you pop into the live chat, let us know where you're joining from, and then if you've got any questions for our guest later on, do pop them in the chat as well. And if you're watching on YouTube on the replay, welcome, and do leave us a comment as well and pop a like on this video, so hopefully more people can find it and discover Stash Chats. So I can see we've got Jan joining us from London and Mel's joining us from Surrey. Mel says, are you feeling the cold in Woking? Haven't been too cold today, but I haven't also been outside very much today. So yeah, it has been quite grey. Good evening, Yvette and Pascha from Kent. Hello, Alison. Thank you for joining us. Yes, so our guest today is Pascha, who I'm sure a lot of you will remember from the Sewing Bee last year. So Pascha was so consistent throughout the whole series. I think like week one, I was like, I think we've got a winner here, honestly. But yeah, so Pascha made it all the way to the final with her really precise sewing skills. So yeah, of course, we can ask Pascha a bit about the Sewing Bee later on, but we can also find out more about how she got into sewing and her stash. So have a little think about what you want to know from Pascha. So let's get her on in a second. We've got Donita joining us from Northwest Montana in the US. So thank you so much for joining us. Right, let's get Pascha on and we can start asking her about her sewing journey. Hello, Pascha.
I'm ready for you to fire away.
Yeah, go for it. Have a little think about what you want to know, everyone. So before we kick off, I want to just say congratulations on finishing your uni course today.
Thank you. Yeah, my final deadline ever was midday today. So I'm officially free, and it's not quite set in yet, but I'm hoping it will at some point.
Once you start doing like loads more sewing, then you'll be like, yes.
Oh yeah. I'm so back. I've been absolutely dying to get back into my sewing. I've kind of been forcing myself to stay away for the last month or so as I finish my dissertations, but I've got a lot of plans.
Amazing. So do you want to kick us off by just telling us a bit of your sewing backstory, like what encouraged you to get into it in the first place?
Yeah, totally. I like to kind of joke that I got into sewing out of stubbornness, which I think is quite typical for me. My mum is really fantastic. She's really into sustainability and she does a lot of climate work. And I started to realise when I was kind of in my teens that actually the clothing that was being presented to me on the high street that I really liked wasn't actually something I kind of wanted to buy into, and I didn't want to, give my money to, support poor labour practices. But there was this dress that I really liked, and it was from this shop that I couldn't buy from. I didn't feel confident in their ethics. So I bought the dress and I made a pattern out of newspaper. I'd never sewn. I returned the dress to the shop and got my money back and felt good that I wasn't supporting anything bad. And then I took one of my dad's old shirts that had kind of moth holes in, and I made the top part of the dress. It was the top of it that I really loved. And I still wear that top. I mean, it needs a little bit of a repair, and it was quite a shabby job on the inside, but I basically just got a YouTube video out. My mum had a sewing machine. She's not a big sewer, but she can sew. And I just decided that I was going to do this because I felt like I didn't have any alternative. And yeah, I got the bug, and then I was absolutely hooked. And my great grandma was a seamstress. And she left behind a lot of patterns, a lot of fabrics. And when my grandma heard that I'd been getting into sewing, she said, would you like to have these? I think the second thing I made was a 50s tea dress, except I didn't really understand the sizing, so it doesn't fit me at all. But I do have it somewhere. And I've just kept going since then.
Amazing. That's really cool to like carry on like a family legacy after skipping a couple of generations as well.
It does feel nice. I feel like historically the amount of people who've sewn kind of through the ages, it feels lovely to do something that's so, I don't know, natural and familiar. And yeah, it's lovely.
That's really cool. And like obviously on Stash Chats I hear like a lot of people's like stories, but I don't think I've heard anyone who's like got into sewing specifically because they wanted to recreate something. That's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. It does kind of mean that I pirate my first sewing pattern? I don't know. I think I did look it up, and it is legal to do. But yeah.
I mean, you're not selling it anyway, so
no,
I feel like you're not
and
profiting off it.
it is a very loved top. It's definitely got its wear.
Well, probably if you'd bought the one from the shop, it would not still be alive. It would fall
No,
apart.
exactly. I think so. I think that's something else about sewing your own clothes is you can really make things to last, and putting love into them makes such a difference with how you care for them as well.
So what is your kind of approach to sewing now? Do you kind of make your own patterns or take inspiration from the high street, or do you use like indie patterns or
It's a bit of a mix, to be honest. I think often I do still kind of see things that my friends wear on the high street that I think that's really nice. I'd love that. And it's almost quite a good litmus test of how much you actually like a style is, am I willing to sit there for however many hours and work out a pattern and cut it out and sew it and everything. So I do sometimes make something that I've seen on the high street, or when I see someone in an amazing outfit, I try and write on my phone notes. So I've got phone notes full of like, a really bad drawing of a top someone was wearing that I thought was really cool and things like that. But also I've, obviously recovering shopping addict from my teenage years. I do enjoy a good scroll on a pattern website and trying to find one that I really love. So I'd say I do a bit of a mix of patterns and self-drafting. I think it's quite fun to be able to go from one to the other and really get into those big self-drafting projects, but then have a little bit of a break and follow a lovely pattern.
Yeah, that's a good approach. So how into sewing were you like before you started applying for the sewing bee? How long have you been sewing the first time you applied?
I was going to say the first time I applied isn't the time I got on. I did actually apply for the sewing bee 3 times. I first applied when I was 18. I'd been sewing for not that long. I started sewing towards the end of COVID. So a couple of years, I think, when I first applied, maybe 1 or 2 years. And it was really exciting, and I got to an audition and everything, and then it didn't happen. I just kind of thought, whatever, I'll try again, I'll keep sewing. But it was really nice because they had some really lovely suggestions of things like, if you've never done, trousers before or something, that might be a great thing to learn before, applying again or something like that. So yeah, it was almost a nice way to, have someone else look at your skill set, I guess. And see what's missing. And it made me, try some other things. And then I applied a second time and I got nowhere. And then I actually know where I was at the time. I was in the car with my dad on the way to a concert together. He's my concert buddy. We were going to watch Beyonce. And I saw on Instagram, I think, that the sewing bee applications were open, and I mentioned it to him, and he just kind of said, "Oh, well, do it right now." And it was like, what do you mean? Like, we're just, we're in the car or what? But he was like, "Yeah, do it right now." There's no point not trying. At least give it a go. And yeah, here I am. So that was really exciting. So I think I must have been sewing by the time I was on the bee. I 4 years, I think. That's probably a good guess.
So this is something that I ask all of the bees that I chat to. So I chatted to Luke quite recently. So of the 3 challenges, like the pattern challenge, the transformation, and the made to measure, which was your favorite to do?
I think it would have to be the made to measure. I don't think it could be anything else. I mean, the transformation's close. I think it was really interesting, actually, because going into it, you kind of think, oh, I'll be good at this and I'll be bad at this. And I was really surprised that the judges thought I was a technical sewer, because I didn't feel that about myself at all. I mean, maybe it's just that I'm always criticizing what I do and picking holes in it. But I thought I would really struggle on the pattern challenge with the kind of precision, and that I'd probably... But I mean, the transformation was then so unfamiliar, but it was a really nice process. And I think every week you had different emotions about all of those challenges. But I think at the end, my favorite was probably the made to measure. I think just be able to, I mean, obviously we always wish we had more time, but being able to have time to kind of put love into it, put thought into it. But I did relish the chaos of the transformation challenge, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I speak to, like everyone who's not been on the bee is like, oh no, like the transformation challenge, that seems really stressful. I couldn't cope with that, because it's like not the sort of thing that you would do when you're sewing at home,
Yeah,
right? You wouldn't get like 7 tea towels and in an hour and a half make a ball gown or whatever they've come up with. But yeah, all the bees are like, oh, it was so exciting, like so creative.
Yeah, I think to be able to just have a chance to just go a little bit crazy and just hack something up and see what shape it makes and things like that is something that you kind of don't give yourself license to do when you're sewing at home. But I think it meant that you could go a bit crazier and do something a bit more avant-garde. I mean, there were some amazing transformations. And yeah, it was a nice kind of release from the constantly thinking about what your next made to measure was going to be and how you're going to do it.
And at least like you don't, like, because you can't practice for that part, you're like then not worrying about it beforehand.
I've got to admit, I did try to guess what some of them would be. I probably still have the note on my phone, but I was sitting on the tube one day or something, and I thought, I wonder what the different challenges could be. I think I guessed 1 or 2 of them. There was a lot of every week we'd know what the title of the week is, so back to basics and things like that, and we'd all be chatting about, okay, what do we think the transformation is going to be to back to basics? Is it like going to be a wardrobe basic? Could it be a shirt? Could it be a kind of sewing basic, a simple skirt or something like that? So we did have a good try to guess every week, and I think we did okay on the whole. I think we did okay. There was one quite funny story though relating to us trying to guess the transformation challenge, which was when we first came in on one of the days. There was a kind of door open to the side, and we could see this rack of dressing gowns, and we were like, it's going to be dressing gowns, it's going to be dressing gowns. No one tell production. We all know what it's going to be. Let's just, what are you going to do for the dressing gown challenge? By about week 5, we'd realized it was actually because there was a pajama manufacturing company in the building. And we'd seen these dressing gowns every week. We're going, surely it's got to be the dressing gowns this week. I mean, how are they going to fit that into holiday week? Until we found out. So that was quite funny.
Oh, that's amazing. That's probably the production team were like, we'll leave that door open on purpose.
Oh yeah.
Throw them a red herring.
Definitely.
Do you have a favorite transformation that you did whilst you were on the show?
I do. And he's next to me now. I actually have all my sewing bee makes are at home. I'm at my family's place right now. And this little guy has got to be my favorite because I don't think I could make him now if you gave me 2 hours, and I don't really know how I did him in 90 minutes. But He brought me a lot of joy, and he brought my family a lot of joy. My little cousin fell in love with it, and I made her a unicorn one for Christmas, and she was sleeping with it and wouldn't let anyone take it away. And it was just such a lovely, I mean, I was so happy when they said fancy dress. I think someone made a gif of me going like, once they said it was going to be fancy dress costumes, because I love dressing up, and those are probably actually my best memories when I was younger of sewing. My mum wasn't a big sewer, but she'd, help sew things on dressing up costumes and things like that. And so this guy made me really happy because I just got to have fun, do something a bit crazy. And I mean, it was a great challenge. I remember just seeing that lineup at the end, because you barely look around when you're in a challenge because you're so focused, and seeing that lineup and being like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, look at these. It felt like a privilege to be around those, other amazing sewers.
Amazing. Oh, we've got Luke watching. Luke's in the chat
Oh,
saying the iconic prop / alligator / dinosaur. So can you confirm which
you know
of the
what?
above?
I think the problem is, my brother was telling me about this, something to do with, I think it's to tell whether I think it's probably a crocodile or an alligator. But apparently one of them, it's the teeth from the lower jaw that are visible, and one, it's the teeth from the upper jaw that are visible. But he's only got one jaw, so we're never going to know. I think the crocodile saw name works quite well. You can just be something in the middle. Someone suggested a dragon as well, although you could probably do with some flames for that.
Yeah, you could just get like a sort of red and orange like scarf.
Yeah, or a funky necklace or something like that.
Yeah, isn't it St. George's Day today? So there you go.
Is
Get
it?
the costume
There you go.
Oh, that's amazing. Were you like, as you were doing it, it was just like sort of coming together in front of your eyes, and then at one point were you just like, this is really good, like I'm doing amazing here, or were you just so focused?
I was more just thinking, I'm absolutely loving it. I'm in my element right now. I think it was just that particular challenge was so much fun. I just remember thinking like, this is amazing. Like, it's like, I need some felt, and then they've got some felt, and it's, I want to add this from the haberdashery, I'll add this, and you just get to go a bit wild and have fun with it. And it was really nice. I think that was actually one of the really cool things about being in the sewing room, not just that I'm a massive Sewing Bee fan, so it was really cool to just be in there, but just be able to go, I don't have any, let's check the haberdashery, and they'd have some amazing, buttons and notions and fabric and all sorts. And it was a bit of a kind of Disneyland for sewers. You go along and there's just this fabric everywhere.
Did you find it like a bit overwhelming, like at the start of like the pattern challenge or something, they'd be like, go and choose your fabric? Would you be like, oh, so many options? Or would you just see one and be like, that's my fabric?
I mean, there was definitely a lot of, it's always hard to choose, and there's often a semi-limited number, so there's a lot of, you're kind of trying to talk to each other and saying, do you want that one? Or I was gonna, no, you can have it, sort of thing.
So polite on the Sewing Bee.
Well, I've got to thank Marcus, because Marcus was the one who, we both went for the same fabric for that first challenge, and Marcus let me have it. So thank you to Marcus. But I mean, I've got to say, at first, like, I was just so excited. I was bouncing off the walls. I couldn't believe where I was. If I was only there for 1 week, I'd just want to love every second, sort of thing. It was a really cool experience.
Oh, we've got Thready Stitch Sew, who's just joined us as well from Yorkshire. Just a reminder to everyone who's watching live to pop your questions for Pascha in the chat. Before we start talking about something else, and then we have to circle back to the bee again. I've got one question from Jen, who was my guest on Stash Chats last week, and she wanted to know about like the finishing. Like, do you finish the seams and things when you're doing your like made to measure projects on the bee, or do you just not have time?
I think it really depends on the challenge and what you're going for. I think when you've got a limited time, your priority is getting the outside done first. But saying that, the judges will still, Esme loves just rolling up the inside of the sleeve to check if it's all right and things like that. So, you're kind of almost prioritizing what you wanted to get done first. I think I mean, to be entirely honest, like they weren't the things I made weren't finished to what I'd usually want them to be. But that's actually been a really nice opportunity to go over them at home. I've been remaking lots of things or taking them apart and fixing them, things like that, which has actually been a really lovely experience to get back into that. And particularly kind of after the bee, I feel like a lot of people have a little bit of a, oh my gosh, you know, what do I do now sewing wise? And it was quite a nice kind of ease you back in thing.
Right, we've got a few questions coming in. So Mel says, how did you keep it a secret about being on the show and about who wins?
I mean, it was such a hard secret to keep. It was so exciting. It was actually a bit difficult because I was meant to be at uni. So I told all of my uni friends that I was still at home. And I told all of my family, apart from my mum, my dad, and my brother who knew, that I was at uni. That was useful, except from the fact that my uni friends started to get pretty suspicious once it hit, you know, 4 weeks into term and I hadn't turned up yet. Apparently they thought I was either pregnant, I'd joined the Secret Service, or I was on the program SAS Who Dares Wins. I don't know if anyone knows it.
Does that seem like more you than being on the sewing bee?
I mean, my flatmates were boys, so we'll give them that. I mean, I you know, did cadets when I was younger, and I do love that stuff. I love being in the outdoors and things like that. I mean, maybe they were a bit disappointed when I said it was the sewing bee, but I mean, it was just the thing is, it was such an exciting secret to have as well, with your kind of close family as well. And it was funny, actually, the week before our names got announced, my nanny, my dad's mum, sent me a text saying, oh, I've just seen the sewing bee applications are open, you know, you should apply. And it was like, oh, that sounds really nice, I might apply. And it was actually then really lovely to be able to call her up a week later and say, actually, nanny, I couldn't apply for it, they wouldn't let me. Why? Because I've already been on it. And things like that. And it was actually the kind of anticipation of being able to tell people just got you through. And that day where I got to call up all of my family and make a big family group chat and everything and tell all my friends was so exciting. It was yeah, really, really lovely.
Amazing. Gabriella says, have you got any advice for wannabes?
Absolutely. I mean, just throw yourself into the parts of sewing you love. I think be able to show that you have a real passion and have things you really care about or unique interests. I think everyone loves seeing that. I think part of what makes sewing bee so uplifting and what makes the whole sewing community really uplifting and lovely is that people are so passionate about what they do and they're just excited to share it with you. And I think I really love that. And I mean, that's what you want to see on the bee, right? People who love what they do. So I would say just enjoy your sewing and do the sewing that you love and that you feel passionate about, and have fun and experiment and try different things.
Yeah. And if you don't get it on the first time you apply, do keep
applying
every year.
Try again. Absolutely. I mean, I think a little bit of determination.
Yeah. Mel says, if you had your time again on the sewing bee, is there anything you would do differently?
Oh, that's an interesting question. To be honest, I try not to think about that too much. I mean, to be honest, I can't think of a lot. I mean, I'd love to be able to say, well, you know, I'd like to spend more time on my made measures at home and designing them and things like that. But you didn't really have the time to practice, you know, in between filming and things like that. And actually, I had an amazing time and I wouldn't want to change anything in case it changed the amazing time I had. And yeah, it was really great, really fun. I might have asked them. They had some really good chocolate oat milk that they gave us in the first couple of weeks. I would have maybe asked them to bring back the chocolate oat milk.
Yeah, what a tease. They just give it for you 2 weeks and then they don't bring you anymore. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, you did really well, to be fair. So I feel like you probably wouldn't want to do it too differently.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, my family was very surprised. I think Luke, I remember Luke joking that, you know, how wrong my dad was every week when my dad sent me a really lovely message saying, you know, really enjoy it. You know, you never know when it might end. I remember Luke being like, tell him to stop saying that.
Well, so like backhandedly supportive.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
Would you go on a sewing bee all stars, like a finalists and winners season?
Yeah, if they'd let me, absolutely. I think a lot of us would jump at the chance. I mean, it was so much fun. I'd love to be back in that atmosphere. And I also really love meeting loads of other XBs. I think that's something that I didn't anticipate as much going on the bee, what a community there is of people who've been on the sewing bee. Lovely, friendly people who you have shared experiences with, even though it was years apart. And also I'm a bit of a bee fan, so I'm kind of starstruck every time I meet one of them. So yeah, I would jump at the chance for a sewing bee all stars.
I'm going to keep talking about it because maybe they'll do it like as a Christmas special or something.
They'll catch on. They're listening.
Yeah. Because you did the catwalk recently with a bunch of the bees, didn't you? At the Stitch
I did.
Festival.
It was so lovely. I mean, I really was just pinching myself. I think it was Tony R was the first bee that I met that wasn't from my series, and I was completely starstruck, kind of lost for words, or probably going bright red. And it was really funny because I logically knew that I'd done a very similar thing, but still actually meeting these, you know, lovely people that you really enjoyed watching and you think are super talented. I mean, it's been so lovely, and they are so incredibly friendly. Like, what an amazing little community. It's really nice and pretty cool to be able to, if you're stuck on a sewing project, just ask a, you know, ex-sewing bee.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I have spoken to Tony R on Stash Chats before, and he's just like so genuinely lovely. Like, I mean, and for all the bees as well. Like, what I just want to know, like, what's their screening process just to make sure that like nobody is mean. Like, even though it's a competition, like it doesn't feel competitive. Like, it's not like people are stressed because they want to win the garment of the week. They're stressed because they don't want to go home because they're having too good of a time.
Absolutely. I think it is really nice, and it is an uplifting place where everyone just wants to support each other and do well. And I mean, wow, some of the designs, like, it was amazing. I loved seeing those come together in front of my eyes. You know, I felt so lucky to be surrounded by such talented people. And you know, pick things up from the people around you and their style and their boldness, and you know, and it's that was a really lovely part of it.
So Thready Stitch Sew says, what was your first sewing project after the sewing bee? Did you have a bit of a sewing slump afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question, actually. I mean, to be honest, I did have a bit of a sewing slump. I think when you've been working kind of so in such a focused way on one thing for, I mean, I guess months, if you kind of include when you find out to filming. Oh, I've got to admit, I can't even remember what the first project was. Oh, actually, I do. It was, I was going to a party, and I was at uni and I didn't know what to wear. I think it was a kind of dressing up party. And so I made a little pink skirt. I think it was Movies or something. And I did Legally Blonde. And I had a pink top, but I didn't have a pink skirt. So I made one at the kitchen table while everyone else was having dinner. But I think that was the nice thing, like doing little scrappy projects, I think gets you back into something. And the same goes for mending a lot of my bee things as well. I think just to slowly get into something, and I feel like mending projects are a really nice way to do that.
Yeah, so you do quite a lot of like mending, like for yourself and sometimes for other people as well.
Yeah, I mean, I try to. I mean, mending, to be entirely honest, like, it's not always the most enjoyable thing to do. Often you just want to make something new. But I think I'm trying to kind of look at how I make things and how I consume and do it in a way that I feel like is, you know, doing the best I can for the environment and things like that. And yeah, I've started to kind of find my groove when it comes to mending things, and when something breaks, kind of making it part of my routine to go back and fix it. And I think it is really lovely because it does make you really value the things you have. And I before I started mending, I had a whole pile in the back of my wardrobe of clothes that I once loved, somehow, wore to death, and it had a hole in or it had a rip in or something like that. I couldn't bear to throw them away because I loved them. I couldn't give them to someone else because they were broken. But, I wasn't actually fixing them. And actually be able to rediscover those clothes that you really love, I think is something that feels really lovely. And when you have the chance to do a mend that puts your own spin on it in some way, then that's even lovelier.
Do you have a preference for like an invisible mend or a visible mend?
I'm not sure invisible is entirely within my capabilities, to be honest. I try and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I'm trying to get out of that when it comes to mending and just get into doing scrappy mends and just saying, you know what, if it's broken, I can't make it worse. So let's give it a go and let's try something. And if it doesn't work, I can unpick it and I can try something else or something like that. So that's where I'm going at the moment. I would really love to be able to learn to mend knitwear. Claire from, I don't know what series she's from, but she's does some amazing kind of mending projects. And I think she sent me some resources that I'm gonna have a look at. But that's something I'd really love to get into, because that sort of invisible mending is just wizardry. I don't even know how they do it, but I'd love to learn.
Those videos of like darning are so like mesmerizing to watch, and then you're just like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not
How
going to do that, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Are you able to tell us anything about the uni project you did about like innovation in mending?
Oh yeah. I did a project a little while ago. It was actually, I think I was working on the project between when I started filming and when it was announced, and it was a team project, and I wasn't allowed to tell anyone that actually I do quite a bit of sewing. I wasn't the only sewer in the team, and so it was quite funny, kind of knowing that the other sewer knew about the sewing bee, and it was even mentioned a few times, and just kind of sitting there, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, we did so my innovation degree is it's a little bit like entrepreneurship. It's an innovation entrepreneurship thing. And we try and take problems that we see and find a way to fix that. And we did a project about mending and looking at how we could find ways to connect kind of particularly amateur menders with people who are looking to get their clothes mended. I think a lot of people do have that stash in the back of their wardrobe. And I think compared to sewers, I think you'd be surprised how undiscerning a lot of people are when it comes to the level of quality that they're able to notice. And I think a lot of home sewers assume that people will be able to see that something's mended, or they'll be able to see that someone's, made it themselves. But people who don't sew, don't notice that difference, and they just think everything looks lovely and looks professional. You always feel more confident sewing for someone who doesn't know how to sew than someone who does, because you'll know they'll notice the errors less, and that actually a lot of people are just keen to get their clothes back into wear, and how we could do that. But I think along the way we found a lot about a kind of amazing local initiatives. I think they're often kind of very localized. In Bristol, we have an amazing place called Sparks that has a repair cafe and things like that, and different vendors in there, and they often do repair shops and things like that. And yeah, it was really lovely.
That's amazing. I think a part of it as well is probably like a cultural shift that I think is already happening, where people can like really undervalue their clothes because they were able to buy them so cheaply from companies that maybe don't use the best materials, don't have good labor practice, that sort of thing. So then you can buy stuff for very, very cheaply, and you're like, oh well, I'm not going to pay £10 to have this fixed because it only costs £6. But it shouldn't, the issue is it shouldn't have cost £6 in the first place, not that it's not worth fixing things. So it is very interesting, like the attitudes around it as well, which is quite difficult, I think, to change.
I think something I'd love to see more of is things like basic sewing skills and mending being taught in schools again. I think that so many, I went to a school recently and did a talk, and there were so many little girls and boys who were so passionate and excited about something like sewing, and actually that they could make these things with their own hands. They didn't even need a machine. They just needed a needle and thread, and the possibilities were endless. And actually, young people do really have that excitement. And I think if we gave them that opportunity to learn about things like sewing, I think that gives you a really nice idea of the value of your clothes and the effort someone puts into making them, even if they're on the other side of the world. And that actually that's worth preserving. That's worth looking after.
Definitely. And little kids are so creative as well. Like, imagine if you gave a class of 8-year-olds the transformation challenge, you'd end up with all sorts of things. It would be incredible.
It was so lovely. When I went to the school, they had a mascot competition on. So they each have a kind of different houses, and they all had to make a house mascot. And it was amazing. I was so impressed. I mean, they were so creative. They were so different. Their houses were inspired by the different playing card suits, and they'd really played on colors and shapes and materials, and most of them were using reused materials. That was, I think, part of the challenge. And they made some really amazing, really inventive things. One little boy was in the Spades house, and he made this amazing little fluffy mole and things like that. And the mole with the spade because it was digging, and it was fantastic, and it was really lovely. Actually, just I think to be able to send the kids home and say, right, this isn't a project you can give to mum or dad, have fun with it. And I was so impressed, I think.
Amazing. Right. Do you want to start talking about your stash? How do you feel about your stash or slash stashes?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely stashes. I've got a couple of bags at uni, and I've got some in where I'm moving to in London. And then I think I've actually still got some at home as well. I'm quite a hoarder, to be honest. I've never thrown anything away in my life. I mean, I literally have, every box that anything ever came in. And so when it comes to things like fabric as well, I do just pick things up. And if someone offers something to me, I'm quite bad at saying no. And so I have ended up with quite a stash. I mean, I guess part of me is really excited to get into it. And particularly at the moment, there are so many pieces in there that I just think, oh, I'm dying to make something. But I think particularly when I was moving and I was putting everything together and there was this big pile of bags, it was like, oh my gosh, how much do I actually have? And this pile of receipts as well, which I didn't want to look at.
That's the downside of never throwing anything away. You've still even got the receipts.
I know, exactly. You can't even pretend to yourself. You gotta face the facts.
So do you have like kind of a theme in your stash? Like, are there favorite fabrics that you kind of gravitate towards, or have you got like a good range of everything?
I have got quite a good range, but I think that's because a lot of my fabrics are reclaimed, or they're gifted from someone, or they're from my great grandma. So I've got a real range of fabrics. So I'd say I gravitate towards natural fabrics more. But I go for a kind of mix of stretch and woven fabrics. I love the color green, so I have a lot of green, quite a bit of blue as well. I love that. But I'm a sucker for something that's got a nice texture or a nice drape or an interesting feel or something like that. And so I kind of I rarely buy fabric online because of this, because I love going to shop and be able to feel them and really, fall in love with something that way. I've been actually in the last year or so, that's when I've kind of started my mending initiative and things like that. I've been really good with my stash. I made this 6-month rule for myself, and I use it for buying pretty much everything. But basically, if I want to buy something, I have to wait 6 months. And it's a really good test for whether I actually want it, because if I don't remember it in 6 months' time, then I probably never needed it. And actually, it's then made it more rewarding and more exciting when I think for ages, I really wanted to make, a little dress like this or something like that. And then I can reward myself waiting and buy that fabric and make the dress I really wanted. But it's also encouraging me kind of when I'm craving a project to go back into my stash a bit more and say, like, hold on, I don't have to wait 6 months. I've got a load of fabric at home that, I need to get into. And I enjoy getting into. But I love organizing my stash as well. I'm a little kind of stash gremlin. I like, I put them together with the patterns that I want to make things from, or little drawings of the idea I want and things like that. I do enjoy kind of going through it all.
So is that how you organize it, kind of by project, and you like assign projects to the different fabrics?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some fabrics that are kind of miscellaneous. They tend to be more ones that I've been given or I've picked up in a charity shop because I thought it was a great price or something like that. And I sort those by Stretch and Woven. So when I find a pattern I really like, I can just dig through either of those. But otherwise, I pop them together with the other things I need for that project. And I kind of have a couple of projects lined up. I've probably got 20 different projects that I could just get into tomorrow. And I can't wait. Very excited.
You literally can get into it tomorrow.
Yeah, I can. I literally can.
That's really exciting. Helen says, what sort of fabrics came from your great grandma?
I've got a variety from her actually. Some kind of quite 80s, 70s prints and things like that. But also she was a really big sewer. My granddad always says she'd sew for anyone who she'd nod to in the street. So it's really lovely because a lot of her patterns have notes on and they'll say, for so-and-so and their measurements and things like that. One of my first projects was a material from her. It was this beautiful green marled wool. It's not unlike the colour I'm wearing at the moment. And I've just loved that skirt, and it was such a beautiful fabric that I just kind of fell in love with from the look of it. And then, I wore it on the bee actually, I think, for Kids Week. And it was just one of my favourite projects, and I love that fabric. But quite a variety. I've got a lot of kind of kids and baby fabrics from her. So at some point, hopefully they'll be useful, but not for a while yet.
Just have to wait for like that, that period where like everyone that starts like starting families. Like, okay, I'm ready. This leads on quite well to Mel's question, which is, do you sew for anyone else?
I do sometimes, but I think maybe I'm just saying this because I'm actually a really selfish sewer, but it's slightly intimidating sewing for other people, I think, because you want to get it right and they think you're good at this sewing thing, and so you have to prove yourself in some way, and so I think there's a little bit of pressure there almost, but I think it's also lovely to have a talent that you can use to show your love for people sometimes. So, whether it's just making something tiny for someone if they're ill or something like that, I find that it's a really nice way that you can just show your love, and that they know that you put love and time and effort into that. And, even if it's just a sort of trinket, it's a pencil case or it's a little, decoration or something like that, that they know you put your love and care into it. I also sometimes sew for my cousins because children are so undiscerning when it comes to what you make. They just can't believe that you somehow whipped that up, and I think it gives you a little bit of an ego boost, but it's really lovely sewing for kids because I think you're slightly less worried about what if they think that seems a bit wobbly or something like that. And I've also kind of, when people ask me to sew something for them, or mend something for them, often my response is that I'd be really happy to teach you to do that. I think that's quite a nice way to, make sure people value your time when it comes to sewing and things like that. So I've also been kind of slowly and occasionally teaching my friends, and my boyfriend, he's actually really keen to learn, which is really nice. And so I do a little bit of sewing with people as well, which I always think is lovely.
That's really nice. You're like recruiting more people for the sewing community. That's excellent.
I'll have an army soon.
Yeah. Do you find as well, like with making things for other people, like the stakes are even higher, like since being on the bee and doing so well, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're really, really good at sewing. I see it on the TV, Pasha." And you're like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
absolutely.
okay."
I think it also gives you a slightly twisted idea of how long it takes to make something, because, you know, on the bee, you're obviously rushing at your full speed all the time, and it's really draining to do that. And you also don't end up with your best work. And it's like, okay, if it took me 4 hours on the bee, then in real life that's going to take me 8. You know, and you kind of, yeah.
Right. So Thready Stitch Sew's got a couple of questions. I think it's Jessica, but I'm sorry if that's wrong. So they say, what is your favorite sewing pattern?
Oh, I think it would have to be the green wool I was talking about earlier that I made a skirt with. It was actually a vintage skirt pattern of my great grandma's, and it's just a really beautiful, simple A-line skirt. And the pattern's a lot longer than I made the skirt. The pattern's, you know, I think it's below the knee, and it's just such a good basic pattern for any skirt, and I've just used it time and time again. I always find myself coming back to it, because a simple pattern like that, it's kind of just the fabric that makes it, which I really love. You know, I've got one in green wool, and then I've got one that I'm doing at the moment that's out of this kind of shiny black quilted material, which is kind of feels slightly like cagouli. I'm not describing it very nicely, but it's a really, really interesting texture, and it's come out as a completely different skirt. And I think that's what I kind of love about sewing, is that you put your, you know, idea into it, whether that's that kind of shape or fabric, and it can come out with a completely different thing, even if you're using the same pattern as someone else. And I guess the bee is proof of that too.
Yeah, oh, that's really cool. And then Jessica also says, would you design your own garment or make your own sewing pattern?
So I definitely make some of my own kind of designs at home. I mean, a couple of things I made on the bee were quite adapted. What I'll often do is use a pattern as a kind of base or the kind of block, and then I go crazy on top of it. For my Chanel dress, for example, I just couldn't find a pattern that I really liked. So I took one and I experimented. And I think I made 2 or 3 toiles for that one, which I wear actually. They're quite nice, and just kind of really played with it on my mannequin and things like that, and kind of made my own pattern that way. I kind of make mini projects. I mean, I have a few kind of mini patterns on my Instagram. I've got some, you know, I made some fingerless gloves out of an old cashmere jumper and things like that. I made my cat, who's somewhere around here making noises, some little mice. I think there's a pattern for that, or hair scrunchies and things like that. So, I mean, I'd love to one day put out some kind of proper garment patterns, but I think, I mean, it's such an endeavor, and I think it's a whole learning curve in itself, kind of apart from sewing, pattern making, and then also pattern grading and digitizing it and things like that. I'm definitely hoping that's something I'll be able to do at some point though.
Exciting. So what have you got planned, like for now, sewing wise?
So I've actually got quite an exciting year ahead. I'm keeping my current job, but I'll just be working that 4 days a week, and then I'm going to have 1 day a week that's officially my sewing day, and just trying to see what I can make of it, and if I can maybe teach some classes or do some talks or things like that. And so I'm actually really excited, because I've got this time that's carved out in my week every week that is specifically dedicated for sewing. I've got one project that I'm dying to get into. It's a really simple project, but I saw this gorgeous top from Reformation, and it was made out of this lovely yellow toweling, and I love toweling fabric. I just think it's so lovely and tactile, and I love seeing toweling used for clothes. And I picked up some gorgeous kind of, I mean, I'm not sure whether you'd say it's a loop back jersey. It kind of feels like toweling on one side, but jersey on the other. At one of the shows last year, but it was just a remnant, and I thought I might be able to squeeze the top out of it, but ideally I'd love some matching shorts. And then at the Knit and Stitch show, I managed to pick up the same fabric again, and it was a remnant, and I couldn't believe that I'd found it again. And I've now got enough to make a top and some shorts, so I'm going to make myself a little beachy summer set out of this yellow toweling, and I just can't wait because I've been thinking about that project for so long. I've also I'm going to make a graduation dress. I'm not completely set on what I'm going to do yet, but yeah, I'm very excited.
Amazing. I hope you've got like a nice holiday coming up so you can wear your beachy set as well.
I'll manage it. Once it hits 18 degrees, I'm straight out there.
In the garden, get some cocktails. It's all good.
Oh yeah, that's all you need. All you need.
Amazing. Is there anything else you want to tell us about or show us?
I mean, I have got a quite exciting box here of pretty much all of my sewing bee makes. I had a couple that I took to uni. I wore my Beyonce one for Halloween, and actually I don't know if you remember the cricket transformation challenge. I had a really fun day when my best friend came over, and she's the same size as me, and so we just tried everything on, and it was such a fun day. And I tried that on, and I was really pleasantly surprised, and so I'm going to try and make that into something wearable, which is why it's at uni with my sewing machine. But maybe I could show you a couple of pieces here. I mean, this is probably one of my. Can you see it reflecting on me? Maybe not. But this is probably one of my favorites because, I mean, I was such a sequin girl. I had these trainers that were a kind of pinky purple sequin, just like this, and I loved them so much and absolutely wore them to death. And when we saw these bomber jackets come up, it was like, why aren't they in a bigger size? You know, why can't we wear these? I think my little cousin has her eye on this. She's the one that's got the unicorn at the moment. So I think I'll probably be passing with it soon. But that was probably one of my sewing bee favourites as well. I think
was that really difficult to sew, like with the sequins, or was it not?
Yeah,
too
you
bad?
know what? I don't think I'd sewn sequins before. I think maybe what I realised over the bee is maybe it's less that I'm a precise sewer or that I'm a cautious sewer. And so I think it was kind of, you know, I think it was all right because I was kind of being quite wary. But I was quite a bit slower than some other people. I think I remember actually Luke again going, right, Pascha, speed up. Like, come on, you can do this. Let's get some proper speed going. Which was really funny. I think they'd already finished their garment. They're basically just at my table being like, come on, pull yourself together. And I think I didn't find the sequins too tricky, maybe. I think I was lucky with my fabric choice. The pink one has a kind of quite a bit of netting. You probably can't see because it's glittering so much. So the sequins weren't quite as dense, but I think a couple of the fabrics were trickier than others. I think I remember Georgie like having sequins picking off in her face, left, right, and center. I'm kind of glad I wasn't around to clean that one up.
Oh, that's amazing. Have you got a sewing space planned out for your new place that you're moving into?
I'm working out at the moment. I'm scouring eBay every day. I'm trying to get a bureau that I can use as a desk and also store all my sewing stuff in. But we're moving to London, so it's going to be a little. I say we. I'm going to be moving in with my boyfriend in London. So you know, it's going to be tricky to find space, but we will make it work. We'll make it work. I managed to pick up a Ottoman bed on Free Cycle, so right now I've claimed that for all of my fabrics. He doesn't get any of that space. It's all mine.
Excellent.
So I'm in the process of transferring everything over at the moment. But I think if I can just say to him, no, this is my job 1 day a week. It's important. I need this space. He'll understand.
It's like, this is my job for 1 day of the week.
Yeah,
so
this
I
is
need
one important day. It means I get
20% of the
space. Yeah, in the flat. Yeah, you're right. Actually, working days, you're right. I get 20%.
I mean, you might practically need more than 20%, so maybe figure it out before you make that case.
Yeah. I'll get my argument prepped.
Amazing. Right, we've only got 5 minutes left, so anyone who's watching live, make sure you pop your questions for Pascha in the chat right now. So Jessica says, have you got fabrics to show us? But I think you've got just your bee makes, haven't you? Because you're between places.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got half my stuff is in my new flat, and half my stuff is in my old flat. And then I'm at my mum and dad's place. So everything's a bit in between at the moment. But I'll definitely be, sharing my Instagram as I get new projects going and what I'm making. There is one other thing that I'm really excited about. I think there are some photos of the fabric on my Instagram, but I've been planning to do a reversible block print jacket. I just think they're gorgeous. Really, and every time I see someone wearing one, I just think I've just been coveting one for so long. And I got some lovely fabric a little while ago. So I'm dying to get into that one too.
Yeah, I feel like block print's really having a moment at the moment, isn't it? And it's just like,
I love it. It's so beautiful. And in the spring as well, I think, just looks gorgeous.
Okay, so Mel says, what will you wear to your graduation? But I think you said you haven't decided yet, haven't you?
I haven't fully decided yet, but I think I'm going to make a dress or a jumpsuit. I'm a big fan of silky fabrics, so I think I'll probably be looking for a kind of silky satin or something like that. I think Bristol Uni have kind of maroon on the gown, so I've been trying to decide whether I need something that goes with maroon. I'm quite keen on green, but I'm not sure it goes with maroon. So I think I'm going to have to do some thinking.
Yeah, maroon is such an awkward color to work into the look, isn't
it? In the summer, there aren't many things that you'd wear with maroon for your graduation, but we'll work it out. It's quite nice, I think, to have a project like that where you have just an occasion and then you can kind of go off and find something that you really love that suits that, and you've got a nice excuse to browse patterns and fabrics and all of that.
Yeah, you can get into real planning mode for it.
Totally.
Jessica says, what is your sewing machine?
So I still use my first machine. I'm looking for a new one at the moment, but I've got a Singer Talent. I got it on the kind of online outlet for about 100 quid. Because I do pick up hobbies quite a lot. I'd say sewing's probably one of the only ones that's lasted, unlike, sourdough bread making and knitting and crochet and card making and all of those things. So, it's not a bells and whistles one, but it's been really reliable. And I think just to have a mechanical machine is kind of a little bit easier to figure out, I think, than one of the fancy kind of automated ones. But now I'm doing some more delicate fabrics, and I'm doing more heavy fabrics, and hopefully I'll be doing some upholstering in my new place and things like that. Wow. So I'm definitely thinking of moving to something a little bit more heavy duty. At the moment, when I made a purse recently, a leather purse, and I was just using the hand wheel on my machine as if it was a hand crank machine to do basically the whole project. And it was kind of that point where I thought this actually something might need to change here. But yeah, I'd always kind of recommend it as a beginner's machine.
Amazing. I've got the same machine that they use on the sewing bee,
which is
it's really stressful if I'm sewing and watching Sewing Bee at the same time, because then I can hear the beeping and I think it's my machine that's beeping, you know, like when something all goes wrong.
You can watch telly and sew at the same time. I'm such a, head down, one. Actually, I say that I think I watched quite a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as I was getting into sewing. It's quite nice to have something going on when you're cutting out and when you're ironing. I'll definitely get behind that. I think it was maybe it was Georgie from our year who had that same machine at home. So when she came on the bee, it was like, oh yeah, I actually know how to do this. But then of course, when any of us had a problem, it would be like, right, who knows how to make the buttonhole work, sort of thing.
No, just like, wish I never mentioned it. Oh, amazing. Right. We better start wrapping up now. But yeah, I've put links in the description to you on Instagram. So yeah, everyone, if you're not already following Pascha, make sure that you go and follow her on Instagram to keep up with all of her new expanded sewing time. That's really exciting.
It should be. I'm really looking forward to it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Stash Chats. It was really, really fun to chat with you, Pascha.
Thanks for having me on. It was really lovely and really lovely to hear everyone's questions.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you to everyone who joined live and joined in the chat. And if you're watching on catch up, thanks for joining us there as well. And I will hopefully see you guys at the same time next week. I'm just making confirmations with the next guest. But yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you.